Hello, everybody. Greetings once again. Having done the introduction part of this course, we are going to move to the topic itself, Introduction to Terrorism and Threat Assessment, Lesson 1. We have to move with speed because we are behind schedule, and there's quite a lot of things that I would like us to cover. So I really would appreciate if we can move with the speed. What we are going to do, we are going to look at an overview. We did this when we were doing the introduction, so I'll be very brief that terrorism is a specific form of extreme violence or the threat of violence carried out for ideological objectives with the aim of instilling fear, outrage, shock, anger, distress, and demoralization into a target population. You have to remember those words: fear, shock, outrage, anger, distress, and demoralization into a target population. Contemporary terrorists, we say the contemporary is modern, utilize many forms of violence and indiscriminately target civilians, military facilities, and state agencies, among others. Then we talked about the terrorist triangle, where we said A attacks B to convince or coerce C to change its position regarding some action or policy desired by A. What we mean by this is that A, terrorist, attacks B, innocent civilian, to convince or coerce C, government or other entity or other organization, to change its position regarding some action or policy desired by the terrorist. You see, they attack innocent people in order to convince the government or other identity or other organization to change its position on the policy that they require. So that is why we say innocent civilians are usually caught in between the terrorists and the government or the other entities. And then we say that the attack spreads fear as the violence is directed unexpectedly against innocent victims, which in turn puts pressure on third parties such as governments to change their policy or position. Terrorists are organized. These are people are very organized, deliberate, systematic, and seek publicity by exploiting the instant far-reaching characteristics of global news network. We say global news network is a double-edged sword. It gives us the information, but also it assists in spreading fear, in causing panic, and also it assists the terrorists in their radicalization agenda, in their recruitment agenda. This is what the terrorists want. They want to send fear. So the current contemporary global news networks is a double-edged sword. It gives us the information we need, but then it also plays a role in promoting terrorism. We shall look at these issues as we move along. A attacks B to convince or coerce C to change its position regarding some action or policy desired by A. Write that down. Write it down. A attacks B. Mark that A is the terrorist. B is an innocent victim. C is the government or a particular organization in order to change its position regarding some action or policy desired by A. I hope you have written that one down. If all of you have not written, if there is a person who has already written, then he can share with the rest. And then, because we want to move a little bit fast, the brief history. The challenges of countering terrorism are not new, and indeed have a long history. The term terrorism was initially coined to describe the reign of terror, the period of the French Revolution, from 5th September 1793 to 27th July 1794, during which the revolutionary government directed violence and harsh measures against citizens suspected of being enemies of the revolution. So this was the government itself engaging in terrorism. 1793 to 1794. The French government itself was engaging in acts of terror against its citizens suspected of being enemies of the revolution. In turn, popular resistance to Napoleon's invasion of the Spanish peninsula led to a new form of fighter, the guerrilla, which derives from the Spanish word guerra, meaning little war. As a weapon of politics and warfare, however, the use of terrorism by groups can be traced back to ancient times. In various forms, terrorism is as old as government and armed struggle, and as pervasive. The nature of terrorism. Most often, terrorism is a form of asymmetric warfare in which a group or an individual wages war against an established entity such as a state or a political system with the aim of coercing that entity to change its position. The nature of terrorism is such that the intended audience of the terrorist violence is not always the physical victims. Terrorists kill civilians usually in order to convey a message to a government. They kill civilians to convey a message to the government. Terrorism is also a very effective means of motivating and recruiting supporters. For example, when a terrorist attacked the Westgate Mall, I hope you remember, you as a student do a research, and this is going to be your first assignment. List the history of terrorism, a brief history of terrorism in Kenya. I mentioned to you the other day, so I hope you are working on the assignment. When terrorists attacked the Westgate Mall, they attacked innocent victims, and according to intelligence reports, the purpose of that attack was to force the government of Kenya to change its policy in participating, sending our soldiers under the banner of UNISOM, United Nations Mission for Somalia, to fight Al-Shabaab inside Somalia. It was a message to the government that we should vacate their land for them to fight whatever they wanted to do. Characteristics of terrorism. A particular characteristic of terrorism is that the attacker can choose the method of attack. Target, placement, concealment, and activation, means and timing of the attack. That is one characteristic you have to remember, that the attacker can choose. When things are quiet, like they are quiet now at home, things are very quiet since Lucid D2. Gentlemen, we need to be very careful because this is the period that terrorists take to plan. It could be a planning phase. So they can choose the method of attack. Methods of attack are many. It can be an active shooter situation. It can be an improvised vehicle, VBI, a vehicle-borne improvised explosive device. It could be use of grenades. It could be use of knives, actually killing people by knives. It could be using other modern ways of staging terrorist attack. You have seen what happened in France and in Turkey in recent years, where they used vehicles to plow vehicles into groups of people walking along the road, and thereby killing innocent civilians and innocent people. You can see that there has been various cases of knife attacks against police, against military officers. So they choose the method of attack. They choose the target, and they choose placement, and the concealment and activation means and timing of the attack. This was exemplified when the IRA tried to assassinate former UK Prime Minister Margaret Thatcher in 1984. The group declared afterwards, "We only have to be lucky once. You will have to be lucky always, because you never know the time. You never know the method of attack. You never know who is the target. You never know the method of placement. You never know the type of concealment they're going to use. You never know the activation means. You cannot know the timing of the attack. So they can be lucky. They only need to be lucky once. But we in the security sector, we need to be lucky always. We need to be lucky always. Disrupt, damage, tarnish. Apart from murder, killing people, violence, damage to property, terrorism also causes a lot of disruption in systems, in national infrastructure. Terrorism disrupts communication systems, damages assets, and tarnishes reputation. You remember the attack at the Westgate. It tarnished the name of the government. By then, the Minister for Interior was Olelenku, who is currently the governor of Kajiado. And you remember that his performance, the attack damaged his reputation a little bit, and even the reputation of the president himself, because most people said they didn't know whatever was happening or what was going on. The information that they were sharing through social media was a false information. So terrorism tarnishes reputations of security agencies, and tarnishes reputations of the government, and tarnishes the reputations of state officers. This is especially the case with critical national infrastructure. I hope you know what critical national infrastructure is. If you don't know, then it will be wise to consult Crispin or Fred. Just ask them politely. That is your own assignment. What is critical national infrastructure? Because as a security professional, I believe that this term should be at your fingerprint at this moment. Such kind of terms should be at your fingerprints as you grow up in your career. What is a critical national infrastructure? Support for terrorism. You have heard many countries support terrorism. Countries that support terrorism include countries like Iran, like Syria, like Saudi Arabia indirectly supports terrorism. Somalia is known to support terrorism. These are some of the countries that have been mentioned here and there that they support acts of terrorism. Many groups and campaigns enjoy wide support for their use of violence to achieve their ideological objectives. This may take the form of material support. For example, governments have often been accused of state sponsoring of terrorism, and political support. Many campaigns of violence have in parallel a political campaign led by the group's political wing. It is important for organizations to have policies in place that forbid political activism of any kind in the workplace. You are a security manager, you are working for a particular entity, ensure there is a policy. Advice, when you become a security manager or when you become a director of security, your role in the organization is also to advise the top executive of the organization things that you feel may put the safety of the people into question. For example, it is your role as a security manager to advise the general manager that we need to have a policy that forbids activism of any kind here at the workplace. So that is your role. You just don't sit there in the office, then you say you are the security manager. You have to have that power mentality to convince the top management to implement these things. Justification of terrorist acts. Among populations as a whole, there may be widespread support for specific acts of terrorism. For example, according to the PEW Research Center 2013, support for suicide bombings is a fraction of what it was in many countries 10 years ago. In one non-conflict country surveyed by PEW, projections would indicate that over 10 million inhabitants, 1 in 7 persons, would agree with the statement that suicide bombing is often sometimes justified. Sometimes justified. You can just imagine 1 out of 7 people in a population of 10 million inhabitants agree that suicide bombing is sometimes justified. And we shall look at these justifications as we move along. what would be the justification for someone committing a suicide bombing? What would justify that? Justification is to make it right, to say that the thing that I'm doing is right because I have a reason. I have a reason, a very strong reason. I think this is the right thing to do. We shall talk about those things as we go along. Ideologies. Ideology is often defined as a common and broadly agreed upon set of rules to which an individual subscribes, which help to regulate and determine behavior. Europol 2013 divides terrorist actions according to adversary ideology. To this end, it presents the following adversary categories. Religious-inspired terrorism. Religious-inspired terrorism. In further topics, we are going to talk about terrorism and religion. Ethno-nationalistic and separatist terrorism. Left-wing and anarchist terrorism. Right-wing terrorism. Single-issue terrorism. I said in the introduction earlier, please research on these terms. So you can write them down, but I would like you to research on these terms. Research on these terms and get to understand the deeper meaning of these words. These rules are also linked to one's beliefs, values, principles, objectives, and goals, etc. Target selection. Ideology plays a crucial role in terrorist target selection. It supplies terrorists with an initial motive for action and provide a prism through which they view events and the actions of other people. There are three general conditions necessary for an ideology to support terrorism. A set of beliefs that guide and justify a series of behavioral mandates. Those beliefs must be sacred and must be neither questionable nor questioned. The behaviors must be goal-directed and seen as serving a meaningful purpose, cause, or objective. So these are some three general conditions necessary for an ideology to support terrorism. A set of beliefs, the beliefs must be sacred, and the behaviors must be goal-directed or goal-oriented. The role of security forces. What is the role of security forces in fighting terrorism? If I may ask a simple question, what is the role of security forces in fighting terrorism? What is the role of security forces in fighting terrorism? Let's go back to the ideology. A set of beliefs that guide and justify a series of behavioral mandates. First, the ideology must provide a set of beliefs that guide and justify a series of behavioral mandates. People do not ordinarily engage in reprehensible conduct until they have justified to themselves the morality of their actions. Terrorists, like most others, seek to avoid internal conflict or dissonance by acting in ways that are consistent with their own beliefs and that allow them to see themselves as basically good. In essence, terrorists must develop justification for their terrorist actions. Justification, They must develop justification. For example, Saeed, half the country supported Azimio, and half the country supported Ruto and the current president and his party. The people who supported Azimio feel that they were robbed of the presidency. And the people who supported the other Kenya Kwanza, they believe that they won the presidency rightful. There is a very big conflict. This conflict, people may engage in violence to justify. People from the Azimio side may engage in violence to justify that, after all, we won the election. It was robbed from us. People from the other side may engage in violence, saying, why are these people staging protests when we won the election fairly? So justification. That is what we are talking about. Those beliefs must be sacred. Second, those beliefs must be inviolable and must be neither questionable or questioned. Belief provides meaning and purpose. It reduces uncertainty and facilitates adaptation and adjustment. It offers deep assurance and communion with others. Belief of special significance in this syndrome is the inability to tolerate doubt and uncertainty. The belief on which the terrorist ideology is based cannot be doubted, criticized, or skeptically examined. Indeed, among those who subscribe to the ideology, they believe that what they are going to do is right. You cannot change it. You cannot change their mind. You cannot tell them that this act is wrong. You cannot tell them killing B to coerce C to change its policy to your desired direction is wrong. They cannot believe that. They still believe killing B to force or to coerce C to change their position is the right way. So no matter what you say, ushawahi kuona wale watu rigid. Even sometimes you work with the people at the workplace who are very rigid. He keeps coming to work very late, because he believes it is his right to come to work late. If you try to question this person why you keep coming to work late, it becomes a very difficult. He cannot change his mind. Anashajua kwamba mimi nitafika kazi. Yani, these people are difficult to work with because they cannot change their mind. It becomes a very difficult situation. They believe that what they are doing is right. So no matter what you tell them, no matter what you do, they still stick to that principle. They still stick to that ideology that what they are doing is right. Then, goal-directed behavior, cause or objective. Third, the behaviors must be goal-directed and seen as serving some meaningful cause or objective. People strive for meaning, and perhaps no cause has greater meaning than the polemic struggle between good and evil. Good and evil. The terrorist mindset is dominated by its melodramatic preoccupation with the destruction of evil. They believe that the other people are evil. There is a term that they call other people. They call them infidels. That these people should not exist. That these people should be dealt with. That these people should die. We shall do anything we can to eliminate these people from the face of the world. So that is what we say. Preoccupation with the destruction of people. They believe other people are evil. So they want to ensure that their ideology tells them that the only way is to destroy these people. The ideas, beliefs, and behavior of the realm of evil are immoral, dangerous, destructive, and threatening. Such an ideology projects all aggression onto the evil social group while justifying aggression against the infidel as a necessary and retribution, if not a moral imperative. Some terms here are very strong, and you need to read more to develop an understanding of what we are talking about. And then also we come to the end of lesson 1. This was an introduction. We shall shortly go to lesson 2, where we shall look at other factors. I have tried my level best to reduce the slides to make it at least 25 minutes, so we can catch up with time. However, in the class where you are at the moment, if you want the trainers to guide you accordingly, you can request them. They can play the slides very slowly to take 40-45 minutes, or they can play them just as they are, or they can play as they pause, so you can write things down if you want. However, I will arrange and I'll send you some notes covering whatever we have done. With those few remarks, I want to say thank you very much for your time today. I will be back. With lesson 2, and we shall proceed from there. So thank you very much. All the best. Have a nice time. Thank you.